Today we'll see what are nullable variables and most importantly why to use them. So basically the inbuilt data types like integer, float, double, you cannot assign a null value to it. You can assign null to a string or any object data type but not inbuilt data type. For example, suppose you have integer a and you try to assign a null value to it. Let's compile this. Okay, it is giving you error, cannot convert null to integer because it is a value type. Okay, so null value is basically assigned to a reference type data, for example an object, so you cannot do that. If you want to do that, there is a concept called as a nullable variable. All right, so whenever you have a inbuilt data type, you can simply assign a question mark in front of it, and then you will be able to assign a null value to it. Okay, so that question, that is a part of a question that now you know an answer that how to create a nullable variable. Okay, simply put a question mark and then you will be able to assign a null value to it. That is fine, but the main important interview question is, I mean, why there is a need to do that, right? I mean, why anybody ever needs to store a null value to integer, right? Okay, so now let's look into the answer. Okay, so now consider a method that is giving a salary of the employee when you pass the employee ID. Okay, so suppose right now we have a function get salary of employee that is taking employee ID. Okay, internally suppose it has a logic return to make a database call. It is going to check the employee ID and what is the salary of that employee, and that it is giving you back from the database. Okay, currently I am just hard coding it to some value for simplicity reason. Okay, so now suppose I call this function get salary of employee and I give employee ID, for example 205, and I'm expecting back employee salary in a float data type, and simply what I'm doing now is printing the salary of the employee. That is fine. But now what happens, suppose into the database table there will be a row with that employee ID and it will have the employee salary column. But what if that due to some mistake or some garbage data, suppose that employee salary column has a null value. All right, then what happens when you get a null value and you try to assign it to the float value, your program will break. It will give you a runtime exception. Okay, so in such a scenario what you should do is, when your values are coming from the database and you are assigning them to inbuilt data types like integer or float, and you may not sure that it may get a null value, in that case simply make your variable as a nullable data type. Okay, so here also this function is going to return float question mark, that is a nullable data type. And then even though suppose you have here a float sal, suppose you are getting a null value from the database, you should be able to return that null salary to the actual caller function. Okay, so here before using this nullable data type, here you can check if employee salary equal to null, then you can actually exit gracefully. For example, you can write that no data available. Alright, and in else case if it is not null value, then you go ahead and print that value. but you use a nullable variable, and then you can take care a situation in which your simple data types are coming from the database and there is a possibility that these can be null values. Then you can have a logic to handle that null values so that your program doesn't crash, and you can write the logic accordingly. Okay, so now you know that how to create a nullable variables by using a question mark, and you also know actually why there is a need to use them. Thank you.